All right, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sydney Diedrich, and I'm the marketing manager here at NewCloud Networks. I want to thank you all for attending the Ransomware Preparedness and Recovery webinar this morning, brought to you by NewCloud Networks and Veeam. Today, you're going to hear from myself as well as Michael Deemer, a Veeam Solutions Engineer. And if at any time during the webinar you have a question, please feel free to use the question feature on your screen, and all questions will be addressed at the end. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and dive right in. To kick things off, I want to really hit home a few of the realities of what companies are facing when it comes to ransomware. The truth is that we as humans, we tend to belittle the likelihood of an event occurring. You know, we hear about ransomware attacks on the news. We hear about them from our neighbors. We hear about them from our colleagues, but we never really think it'll happen to us. And the reality is that ransomware attacks are actually expected to occur every 11 seconds by 2021. And this statistic actually used to be every 14 seconds last year. And what this shows is that ransomware attacks are actually becoming more frequent as we progress. In fact, attacks on businesses have actually increased by more than 365% from Q2 2018 to Q2 2019. And lately, we've also heard a lot about cyber criminals leveraging the uncertainties around COVID-19 to spread malicious emails disguised as information on the stimulus checks or CDC guidelines. And all of this really points towards a continuing rise in attacks this year. And along those same lines, and undoubtedly heightened by COVID-19, another reality that we see with regard to ransomware is that while no one industry is excluded, verticals like healthcare and financial services are especially at risk due to the sensitive data that they handle. So hackers know that for these companies, downtime can mean loss of life, it can mean loss of funds, and they're more likely to get payment quicker. And in fact, attacks on healthcare companies are expected to quadruple over the next year. So chew on that, we definitely are seeing a continuance and rise. And so really what I wanted to lay the groundwork for is what are you doing to proactively prepare your business for an attack? How confident are you in your ability to stop an attack? And if you can't stop it, how confident are you in your ability to recover? So according to Malwarebytes, only about 37% of businesses are confident that they can stop a ransomware attack. When in reality, no one out there is immune to these threats. We're no longer using the term if this happens. It's now when you face an attack. So think about how your company might respond to this, and think about what you're currently doing to be prepared, and let us help you bridge those gaps so you can no longer afford to be unprepared for a ransomware attack. So to put this in perspective, I want to take a look at a real-world example. Back in May of last year, the city of Baltimore was hit with a new strain of ransomware at the time called Robinhood. The virus was deployed on all of their servers with the exception of essential services. They were all taken offline, and a ransom was demanded totaling around $76,000. And the city did not regain full functionality for over a month. Since the attack, they pumped over $10 million into remediation recovery costs and the hardening of their IT environment. And meanwhile, the estimated loss in revenue and other damages in the aftermath of the attack totaled about $8.2 million. So all this added up brings the total cost of their ransomware attack to $18.2 million when the ransom that was initially demanded was $76,000. So had they been proactively prepared, there could have been immense preventative measures taken to reduce that overall cost of the attack for them. And speaking of cost, what happens when we face an attack? What are the costs? A lot of people think about monetary costs associated with attacks, but like lost revenue due to downtime. There's also, which is a non-monetary cost that we see with customer attrition, retribution to affected parties, or excuse me, monetary costs such as a retribution to affected parties we also see, but there's non-monetary costs like damaged reputation. And IDG tells us that all of this will kind of boil down to $6 trillion annually in damages by 2021. So we don't want your company to be a part of the statistic. Like I mentioned previously, we want to help you proactively prepare and minimize costs as much as possible. Now, with that being said, I'd like to take this time to hand it over to Michael Deemer at Veeam to give you kind of the overview of ransomware and dive into a little bit more about remediation and what that looks like.
Perfect. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you. So again, my name is Michael Deemer, Systems Engineer here at Veeam Software, and I'm going to be walking you through ransomware in the big picture. So the very first thing I really want to start off with is what is ransomware? So ransomware is a type of malicious software that... Yours is too. I hope. Sounds like it's going back and forth. Is this any better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, cool. So again, my name is Michael Deemer, Systems Engineer here for Veeam Software, and I'll be taking you through ransomware in the big picture. The very first thing I really want to start with is what is ransomware. So ransomware is a type of malicious software that we like to call in the IT world malware. What does this do? Well, at the end of the day, it restricts access to your computer and or the files until the ransomware is paid. Now, it really operates under the assumption that the encrypted data that the users have was important enough that they're willing to pay. I would say a majority of the time that is absolutely true. Now, there is some cases that, hey, they might get a mailbox that has nothing, but there's very few and far between. Now, what this is really doing is it's looking to hold your data ransom, right? So it's going to encrypt it. So very high level of encryption, you need two keys. Right now, if encryption would hit and a hacker were to do it, they would have both keys. You just need one of the keys to open the alley, right? Now, what does this do is, and even sometimes what ransomware will do is they will threaten to leak the sensitive data or the sensitive information rather than you paying for the actual monetary value because they know it's going to hinder you more if they leak it and make it go public. So let's actually kind of dive into this and kind of look what it looks like from a high overview. So let's kind of look at this. Let's get out of that. 1 second. There we go. So where this is all going to start is every sector, every vertical, and really every type of facet is going to be really at risk at this particular case, from higher education to financial services, all the way down to the energy sector, manufacturing, telecommunications, retail, and the healthcare. So most of these people are fighting on two fronts, right? So some are fighting for the actual legislation that's going on, especially for like energy and retail and stuff like that. They're getting new particular laws that pass down that this is how the data has to be handled. So they have to be on top of that, but they also have to be secure. Now, higher education, they have to be protecting the actual end user or the actual student's data. So making sure that is actually private and not able to be seen from the outside world, especially with today's world where everything is online nowadays, where kids are going to school from little to all the way up to college, all the way in these virtual classrooms. This is getting even more and more into it, right? So let's kind of talk next to a little bit about the common infection approaches. Let's see if we can move that. There we go. So some of the common infection approaches is Trojan horses or Trojans. I would assume that most of you guys have heard something about that. And the reason that you guys have heard it is because it's honestly the most common attack vector. Why is it the most common attack vector? It's because it comes through email attachments. So they usually contain some type of malicious macro that are inside of that attachment. So your normal ones are like, hey, you want a vacation, click here to make sure that you sign up on time. Or even more, where they're getting a little more developed or targeting a little more specifically, they'll reach out to like HR or system admins for them to update certain things. And it's just a simple click, and then the malicious macro goes out. Now, the next one here is a common infection approach, which is completely something that you guys can control on your own. Removable media. Removable media is a very simple way to infect a personal computer, any type of actual computer that you can stick it into. Now, the reason for that being is most things that you stick into your computer, they're usually trusted. So you usually click like, yes, trust this device. And a study was done by Google and 2 universities. They dropped a USB stick in 2 public places, basically triggering human curiosity. What happened was 49% of those people actually picked it up, took it home, and plugged it in. Now, luckily for them, there was no malicious macros or any type of rootkit that was actually going to be the exploit of that. But it very well could have been. And 49% is a very high chance, right? That's a very high percentage rate. That's almost at 50%. So if you do want to be one of the 49%, I would probably have been one of them too. Because if you find a USB drive on the ground, you might have think, hey, that have Bitcoin on it or have some type of useful data that I can use. The biggest thing is if you do find some type of removable media, take it to you can still use your own computer, but build a virtual sandbox. So once you plug it in, even if there's something malicious on there, something that's really going to try to expose the OS or try to expose any security flaws, you're able to have that in a virtual sandbox. And as soon as like your AAV or your antivirus would find it, it would just shut down the actual virtual sandbox, no harm, no foul, and nothing was actually done. Now, the next 3, you're going to really see the next 2, you're really going to start seeing around your Christmas or your end of the year type of sales, right? So malvertising. So malvertising, what it does is attackers compromise a weak infrastructure for an online network. So let's just say it was Amazon or something like that. They got in, and it was a legitimate ad server. So it was legit. Everything looked like it should. However, once you actually click the ad, it actually sends you to a secondary site where you start to put in personal information that they're just gathering. It looks like a one-to-one copy, but it's actually truly not the one site. You'll definitely see that around the bigger holidays. Same thing with social media SMS. You're going to see this a lot around the political times as well, where these shortened links are often they're all Java-based. And they require almost little to no action from the end user other than just clicking the link one time. So you might get a text message from an unknown source, and it says, hey, please click this link to show your availability or something to that particular means. You click on it. You only clicked on it, and you're like, hey, it's protected, no harm, no foul. However, it actually has an exploit at the end that's actually going to go in and start to encrypt or do some type of rootkit to that particular data. Now, the last one that I really want to talk about is ransomware as a service. This has been growing vastly over the last couple of years due to the vast affiliate networks that are out there. This is where ransomware is easily deployed and managed from almost anyone, whether it's somebody that doesn't really know a lot to somebody that knows everything. These ransomware services are that you get to spin up your own call center, you get your own agents, you get your own engineers. It's truly ransomware as a service, where they can make a very high-end income and just have these particular rootkits go out. So there's people that are doing this day in and day out. Now, that was mostly around Windows. Now, this doesn't really mean that just Windows is going to be your security flaw. Now, whether you're running Linux or Mac OS or Ubuntu or something like that, you're still going to have those particular ransomware hits, right? So Linux has Linux kill disk. Mac has Mac's file coder for ransomware, right? So it doesn't matter what OS you're running. Some are more hardened than others, but you're still going to be at risk wherever you are in the OS field. No one's completely out of the loop for ransomware. Now, I do want to kind of show you what ransomware or malware would look like in an email, right? So, hey, looks like you just got a new feature, right? So you got a new email. It looks like it came from Microsoft. Everything looks legit. It says Microsoft at the top, Anti-Spam Pro. You're like, hey, who wants spam? I don't want spam. And you read the description. It's for privacy is changed. Click this following link to, get your free offer of Anti-Spam Pro. You're like, of course, who wouldn't want anti-spam? So you go in there, and it's asking for an auth token, right? So this is very normal for Microsoft to do. However, what you don't notice is that it gives you read and write access to your mail. This is like giving your house keys or your keys to your car to the hacker and saying, hey, have your way with it. I'm really done with it. But you didn't know that you're actually giving those permissions over, right? So this is the keys to the kingdom: read and write access. Now, as soon as you do that, as soon as you press accept, it phones home to that ransomware server. It's going to immediately know that it can start encrypting that mailbox, right? So with that mailbox, I would say a good majority of the mailboxes are 50 gigs or lower, right? There is those occasions where they're definitely higher than the 50 gig threshold, but most of the time they are around 50 gigs. Now, 50 gigs is really not a lot to encrypt, especially at the rate and the speed that they have behind on some of these servers. 50 gigs is going to take like absolutely no time. So this is what an email would look like at a high level of encryption, right? So it's all encrypted. Everything's going to say infected. You can't read a single thing because this is encryption. You have to have 2 keys to unlock it. So this is just showing the 1. Now, what they're going to send you is another email that says, hey, Bitcoin is accepted. Hey, do you want to pay the payment to get your email back? Now, at this point in time, you need to be thinking, what's my exit strategy? Should I pay the particular ransom and get my data back? Or hopefully you had a backup of the data so you can just revert back without actually paying for it. Now, just a little bit of tidbit information. Back in the day when ransomware first started, there was about 2 or 3 companies that really did it. And those companies were, and for what they did, they were pretty modest. When I say modest, they would actually give you your data back after you paid. But that was in the heydays of ransomware, really far back, 90s, maybe early 2000s, when they actually did what they said they were going to do. Since there's so many new players to the game, that's absolutely not the case anymore. There's nobody that's really just looking to make money. They're looking to expose your data and make money at the same time. So a lot of times is even if you pay the ransom, you'll pay the ransom, whatever the fee may be, you get your data back, but they also leak it to the dark web and maybe also publicly expose all your data as well. So you just paid money for them to basically send it to 3 different outlets, right? Now, let's actually kind of look at some of the ways that we can start to be prepared or on the offense instead of, when it happens, being on the defense. So there's a lot of easy things that we can do from a high level to making sure that the ransomware attacks are lessened. Number 1, keeping all your software up to date. It sounds very minuscule, like, hey, everybody says keep your software up to date. But the reason that IT hounds on this so much is every time a patch comes out, every single time there's a new an update, is because the actual manufacturer has found a security flaw in something or another, and that's why they're patching it. So they're making sure if your Windows or your Linux or even your Mac OS is always patched, you're going to have a less likelihood of actually getting attacked. Now, this one's going to be for more of your IT team. So perform a threat analysis with your security team. So do like a penetration test. See what your vulnerabilities are. See where you're lacking before somebody else tries it, and then you're learning those with them. Do the penetration test to yourself. See where you can actually do some security hardening, making sure that everything, has different layers of credentials and really good security hardening is really going to be the key. Now, this one, I really think this is one of the biggest ones, is train your staff on security best practices. So not opening attachments like Trojan horses or SMS texting or anything like that from unknown sources. So if you can't verify the source, don't click on the link. Pretty easy. Now, I think this one's also very keen. Inform all employees if a virus reaches the company network. So let's just say, Miss Sally, she finds a particular ransomware virus on her particular computer. That should be known throughout the whole entire organization. Why? Because potentially there could be more executables out there that are roaming around that are just waiting to be clicked. And it also puts the employees on top of edge to make sure that maybe they're going to be looking at those particular emails a little more seriously and not so click happy as always. Now, the last 2 are the absolute must-dos. Back up all your information every day. I don't know about you, but I know that if all my day's work was basically vanished every single day, that would not be very good. Also, back up all your information to a secure and offsite location. So really making sure that you target an offsite location like you normally would with NewCloud, right? And then lastly, right, let's roll into the mastering of the 3-2-1 rule. So this is actually the 32110 rule. So this is going to have 3 different copies of data, 2 different types of media. So as you see here, we have 1 spinning disk and 1 actual tape drive, 1 off-site and 1 offline. Now, the reason that we do the 1-1 is 1 is off-site in the cloud, so you can always pull that back down, and then 1 offline, so that way it's completely off-write and can't have any overwrite. So it's read once, write many, or write once, read many, right? So you can always look at the data, but you can never write to it again. And then the reason that you do that is 0 errors after backup and recovery verification, really making sure that your data is good and that you can validate it and push it back to the corresponding production network when needed. Now, let's kind of talk about a backup copy job and overall what a backup copy job is. So on the left here, you're going to see your hypervisor, whether you're running VMware or Hyper-V or even Nutanix. You could even run Nutanix. Now you have your virtual machines up top. This is actually your physical server that it's sitting on, and then you have your data store. Now over here in the middle, you're going to have your Veeam backup and replication sitting on a physical Windows server. Now that little circle in the middle is actually their proxy. The proxy is actually the one processing and moving the data. And that is the corresponding repository on the far right is where we're actually moving the data to. So with a backup copy job, I'll kind of show that here. In NewCloud, they have a repository. If you wanted to, from repository to repository, move that data, you definitely can. You just send over the A blocks, the C blocks, and the D blocks, and you can make a full. This is going to kind of show you like some GFS involved, but realistically, the overall goal here is that you can send it from your production network to NewCloud with a backup copy job, really allowing to master that 3-2-1 rule of offsiting. So here's your production, here's the offsite, really making sure that it's already good there, right? Now, this just kind of gets into different ways the C blocks and D blocks and A blocks can get compressed and to make GFS. I'm not going to get too much into that today, but the overall goal here is what you're looking to need to know is you can move your on-prem repository or data in your on-prem repository to a repository on the other end using a TLS tunnel. All right, so let's actually go here to the next one. All right, so Cloud Connect for backup files. So again, you're going to have on the left-hand side, this is going to be all your production. So again, Hyper-V, VMware, Nutanix, got your 4 virtual machines, got your Veeam backup and replication, got your actual physical server, the data store, the proxy, and then the repository is landing on, right? Now, as you see here in the middle, that's actually going to be the TLS tunnel, and it'll kind of do a little bit of build out here that we're going to actually use to do this. So as you see here, here's your production network. So you have a client sending it over to the cloud, hitting the cloud gateway, which is a TLS tunnel, and then landing those particular blocks in Cloud Connect, right? So just more of ways to move the data and moving the data all the way over. And now you got all your blocks. All right. Now, Cloud Connect replication. Cloud Connect replication is a 1-to-1 ratio. So imagine you have a production site, and then you're going to use a secondary site as a colo or data center. You can do that. So with Cloud Connect replication, you can actually use NewCloud as the actual replication target. So as you see here, you have a WAN accelerator. A WAN accelerator, what that's doing is actually going to compress the WAN as far as we can. We can usually get about 50x saturation in it. What that's doing is taking those big OS 64K block sizes, compressing, deduping them, and sending them over the wire. Really what this is for, WAN acceleration is really for the client or client yourself that would have a meg pipe that's less than 100 by 100 symmetrical. Anything less than that on a meg pipe side, you could benefit from the WAN acceleration. So that's what the little WAN accelerator is right here. So as you can see, we have these four virtual machines sitting in NewCloud, right, that are on standby. Now, these virtual machines on the left have the same data as the ones on the right. The only difference at this point in time is the ones on the right in the cloud actually are powered off. They have the same amount of data. Data from here is always getting thrown over here. So with replication jobs, you can do it every minute if you really wanted to. So every minute there's any type of change, a delta gets thrown to every VM that it's corresponding to. So let's just say, for instance, these two virtual machines actually power off, right? So they actually come through and they powered off. Now, what you can do is, and that's on the production side, they powered off on the production side. What you can actually do is actually just go boop and power them on the Veeam service provider side. And now those virtual machines are up and running. Now, let's actually talk a little bit about insider protection for the Veeam Cloud Connect. So with this being said, it's called the recycle bin per tenant. But realistically, if you can see it down there, keep deleted files for 14 days. So let's just say you have a malicious actor, malicious user that has got onto your site or to a client site that is now deleting backups. They're trying to to really try to make this as worse as they can, right? So they delete all the backups. So it looks like on the client side, the on-premise side, it looks like all the backups are now gone. However, there's a catch. They're actually all still there. They're not on-prem. However, they're in the recycle bin that's going to be there for 14 days on the Cloud Connect side, on the Veeam Cloud Connect side. So in that repository, even if it looks like all your repositories got purged, it's still going to be good on the other side. All right, so let's actually kind of move on to some best practices and some protection tips. So rotating drives and on-premise stuff, let's kind of go into that. So now, a physical server, Windows or Linux, we can do that. Now, some of the best practices is not having it domain joined, especially if it's your backup server. Having different credentials, right? So you have different credentials per application and for local accounts. Now, the last one for the Windows firewall, you can definitely do. I would definitely suggest an AV for that, but a Windows firewall will definitely do the trick. Direct attached storage, so actually having storage arrays that are directly attached. And the key for having that is a mechanicalism to turn the system on or off. And then having that particular array off except during the scheduled backup window. So really making sure that these particular devices or repositories or even data stores, right, are really, really, really hard to get to if it's not during a backup period. All right, so kind of going into passwords, Windows passwords, for instance. Windows can either be like domain joined, right? So you can push those out via Active Directory or just local accounts. Now, the Veeam Cloud Connect credentials are actually specified from the service provider themselves, so they can set you up with some really encrypted credentials. Linux is going to be Linux account or Linux private key. You're really going to see Linux private key, especially if you're in the Linux world. Integrated backup storage account. So let's just say you have a Dell data domain or an HP grid or an extra grid appliance, right? So really having some of those really high-end appliances will also help because they can actually have different levels of access to really make sure that they can't get to them, right? So especially those HP or these extra grid or Dell data domain, those duplicating storage devices, you would have like another local admin account just to access those. And then credentials for SMB shares. So just, again, this is all about security and really protecting this. Credentials for really protecting those SMB shares and the data that sits on them. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about mixed repositories. Now, repositories where we can actually land the data is quite vast. So whether you want to land on a Linux repository or you want to land on an actual Windows file server, you can do either. It really doesn't matter there. It just depends really what you guys have at your fingertips and what you guys want to leverage and what your ending goal is, where you guys want to have your particular data at rest. Now, let's talk about a little bit about VLAN segregation. So there is some variants designed to harvest data from Active Directory, and then they actually traverse the network. So if a workstation is infected, it most likely has a circumstance that would help with them steam the spread, right? So this can especially be notable when the variants of the operating are to operate similar worms, right? So crypto worms, and they start to appear. So basically, if it's on the domain controller, a workstation got affected on the domain controller, and it has the right permissions, it's going to keep spreading, right? It's just going to be like a crypto worm, really continue to get in there and get all the hooks all the way out. So let's talk about ransomware remediation and recovery. So what are the steps to actually do? So let's actually kind of go into that. So obviously, the number one is you could definitely pay the ransom. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that it's going to be decrypted. There's no guarantee that they're not going to leak the information. There's no guarantee that they're not going to make it public or share it or resell that data on the black web there. Now, the biggest thing is to making sure you have a backup. So restore from, don't restore from a compromised data point. And then contact your local crime prevention fraud office. So really making sure that you're letting all the particular people know that are in the need to know that you think that could help benefit with this particular process. Now, let's talk about a secure restore. So what does it look like when a zero-day risk happens, right? So some of you may know what a zero-day risk is. It's basically when they launch the attack. It's right kind of like the before. So let's just kind of start with this on the very left. So the file's downloaded and sit basically dormant in the file system. Now, an exploit is created to leverage that particular download file. So a backup has now taken that backup file. Day zero hits, right? So day zero is now that particular exploit is in the backup file. Now, once it's in the backup file, the actual attack is launched. So now what do we do, right? So AV awareness. So now we're going to have the event, your AV go out there and actually try to go look for signatures, looking to actually start to build what's actually going on inside. And then it's going to actually release the signature saying, hey, this is a particular rootkit, toolkit, actually what's going on. And then you actually want to clean up the backup, making sure that we can actually restore from it. So we're going to go back to, we're going to isolate the particular environment, run the latest AV, so the antivirus, run all the definition scans against the backup, and then revert to the newest or the most current backup that's not corrupted. Now, let's talk about endpoint devices and non-virtualized systems. We have been talking a lot about like virtual machines, Hyper-V, VMware, Nutanix, but let's just talk about like the Veeam agent for Linux, for instance. The Veeam agent for Linux makes it easy to follow the 3-2-1 rule, really making sure that you can air gap your particular data. Now, this is the reason because we can actually integrate with Veeam Availability Suite and Veeam Backup and Replication, where we can actually use a controller or a server to manage that particular data in the data set that's on it. Also keeping the agent automatically updated. There's a lot of good stuff that kind of goes along with agents. Now, let's talk about the Veeam agent from Microsoft. Same thing, you're going to be able to control it right through the Veeam Backup and Replication controller. You can keep it auto-updated. You can even push it out through Active Directory. You can actually push it out by actually just IP address and credentials as well. And it's going to show you a lot of granular settings inside of there. Again, you can still master the 3-2-1 rule with Microsoft. Now, last but definitely not least, before I turn it back over to Sydney here, one of our Platinum partners, I do want to talk about Veeam One. So I think Veeam One is one of those applications that I think is really a necessity in most environments, especially the ones that have a big presence in the virtual world, whether that be Hyper-V, Nutanix, or VMware. This is really going to give you 24-hour or 24/7 real-time monitoring and analytics. So it's going to be showing you, for instance, some of the cool ones that I really like inside of there that they have like pre-baked alarms. So over and under leveraged actual virtual machines. So if a virtual machine has too many cores and it's actually not being leveraged, it's going to say, hey, this particular virtual machine has 8 cores on it, but you've only ever maxed it out at 4. Same thing with RAM and CPU, resources, data stores. There's a lot of good ways that you can start to isolate and really understand your virtual environment to the best of its ability. So I want to take this time, pass it back over to Sydney, one of our Platinum BCSP partners, and thank you guys.
Great. Thanks so much, Michael. Really appreciate the presentation there. So the key takeaway here for everyone on the webinar is that NewCloud Networks actually works very closely with Veeam to offer your company total ransomware protection. We do this by combining the Veeam software with our ultra-low latency network of cloud hubs, which allows you to create a secure, encrypted, and automated backup of your data while getting it off-site quickly and pulling it back when you need it. And with replication, you can get really granular with your restore, isolate compromised files, and recover the rest of your data as needed. And I hope you learned a lot from Michael's presentation of the solution that's available here today. For those of you who aren't familiar with NewCloud, I do want to take a quick step back and just give you a quick overview of who we are. So NewCloud's a cloud service provider. We've been in business since 1988. Obviously, at the time, we weren't in cloud or called NewCloud networks. That would have been some tremendous foresight on our part. But our background is in networking, and we've evolved several times over the years to adjust our offerings according to the changes in technology. And in doing such, we've amassed over 1,000 customers in the US and in Europe. We are a platinum level partner with Veeam, and we were one of the first partners actually to launch the Cloud Connect solution with Veeam as a Veeam cloud service provider. So we've built a reputation for quality within our industry, and our SLA and our customer satisfaction rating do a great job of exemplifying that. This map is a breakdown of our nationwide ultra-low latency network. The network is actually designed and built for backup and disaster recovery. And when we talk about backup and disaster recovery, it is important to have your data both far enough away from your main site so that it won't be affected by the same natural disaster, but also close enough so that it's usable when you actually need to stand up your VMs, as Michael showed in that demo. And we actually control the bandwidth and latency between these locations, so we ensure that our customers' data is always usable whenever you need it. So if your company is hit by a ransomware attack, this means that we can get your data and your backups and replicas to you quickly, effectively limiting or eliminating downtime. We work hand in glove with Veeam to bring our customers the best-in-breed solutions that are available. We have a variety of Veeam offerings that we support, and our engineers are Veeam certified and implement technology fast. We offer a full suite of Veeam backup and disaster recovery services, as you can see here on the screen. Everything from backup as a service, replication, which is disaster recovery as a service solution, backup for endpoints, and Office 365 backup as well. So at NewCloud, we believe that great technology is powered by great people, and we're always being asked what sets us apart from the competition like Amazon and Microsoft, and our answer is always the same. We believe in personalized service. We're not a 1-800 number, and our customers can rest assured that we have top engineers available to them 24/7. And we know that no two companies are the same, so we don't believe in cookie-cutter cloud solutions. We work very closely with our customers to ensure that we develop solutions that address their core business needs, and we implement these solutions with our best-in-breed technology partners. The bottom line is that we believe in taking care of our customers. So with all of that said, I do want to thank everyone for joining the webinar. I hope you learned a lot about ransomware preparedness and recovery, and one of the most important things to remember is that you are not exempt from an attack. Your company will face something like this in the near future, and proactively preparing can make all the difference. So in terms of next steps, you've heard a lot about NewCloud, you've heard a lot about Veeam. We'd love to talk to you about your unique business needs and understand how we can help you to proactively prepare for an attack. We also have a free trial available for those of you who are interested in kind of kicking the tires and testing the features of our backup service. And you can always reach out to Michael or myself with any questions you might have after the webinar. Or at this point in time, I would like to invite you to use the question feature on your screen and go ahead and enter in some questions that you do have from Michael and myself. I do see a few coming in here right now. The first question, I'll go ahead and answer. If I have a file server corrupted with ransomware, is my only option to stand up in a NewCloud data center? And I'll go ahead and throw that one over to Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a couple different options as long as you have a backup. So as long as you have a backup, you can technically, you can bring it up to like Azure, AWS, or you could bring it right over to NewCloud, absolutely, and actually stand that file server back up, have it back up and running, and then you can start bringing those files back over after you fix your actual encryption or whatever is actually going on your production network. Fix that, and then you can actually start pushing it back over to production. So yeah, absolutely, you have an option, but that is one of the options, absolutely.
Great, thanks, Michael. Another question coming through here: do you support immutable backups?
Awesome, that's actually a good one. I think we can both answer that one. I can answer it from the technical side, and then maybe you could see if you have a little bit of information from your side. So yes, absolutely, Veeam does support immutability, absolutely all day. So from the Veeam standard, yes, we're gonna always try to push to immutability. So yeah.
Same with NewCloud. We support it. If it's available through Veeam, it's available through NewCloud.
Yep.
Great. Another question here. I heard that ransomware can affect more than production and also backups. Can NewCloud and Veeam protect that?
Absolutely. So as long as you have a backup of your particular data, and it's actually going off through Cloud Connect. Doesn't really matter if you get ransomware, right? So let's just say you have one of these crazy rootkits or toolkits go out there, and they even start to delete your production network. They even delete your backups off your production network. As long as you're going up through Cloud Connect and actually housing with NewCloud, they can pull it out of their recycle bin and push it back to the on-prem, just like nothing ever happened, even if there was a malicious insider on the inside that had all their credentials. No matter what, they still can't delete the Cloud Connect copy that NewCloud has.
Great. Next question here. How fast can I spin up a Cloud Connect environment in the NewCloud data center? And I can answer that. That's going to be completely dependent upon the size of your data and what type of pipe you're dealing with. So we can spin it up in as fast as a few hours, or we can spin it up in a matter of days if it's going to take mailing a seed drive to you to get the data in the best possible way. If your pipe's not going to be able to support it, your bandwidth isn't going to be able to support it. So it's completely a one-off discussion of how fast you can get your data into a NewCloud repository. And I believe those are all of the questions that have come through the pipe. So I do want to, again, thank you very much for joining the webinar with us today. We'll give you a few moments back to your day, and we hope that you learned a lot. And we look forward to chatting with you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.